Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Crypt Finder. So, I've been focusing a lot on made-for-TV horror movies and thrillers, and your first reaction might be, uh-oh, Brian, you're cheating here just a little bit, and you're right, kind of. I want to talk about a mini-series, but it was made for TV, and frankly, it's one of the best and most interesting out there. And so, we've got to dive into the chilling world of Salem's Lot. This was the 1979 miniseries adaptation of Stephen King's classic novel. Although it originally aired in two different parts, there have been theatrical cuts of this that have been distributed globally that offer a somewhat different experience. While these edits fit into a more traditional movie time slot, they sometimes leave out all of the atmosphere of the small town vibe or the character quirks that make this so interesting and engaging. So, if you've never seen this before, please track down the full miniseries instead of any kind of truncated version. Salem's Lot centers on Ben Mears. He's played by David Soul of Starsky and Hutch fame. He is a successful author. He returns home to the tranquil town of Salem's Lot, Maine after many years away. He's haunted by a disturbing childhood encounter at the ominous Marston house, where he believes he witnessed the ghost of its infamous owner, Hubie Marston. So Ben decides he's going to take all of these long dormant memories and all of these lingering fears, and he's going to craft them into a new novel. But he's very surprised to find that when he arrives in the town, the long-abandoned Marston house has recently been purchased by a pair of antique dealers, a Richard Straker and the elusive Kurt Barlow. As Ben reacquaints himself with the town and its residents, a series of unsettling events begin to unfold. A young boy goes missing. Mysterious deaths start to plague the community, each more inexplicable than the last, almost like a contagious form of pernicious anemia. The once thriving town is gradually decimated as more of its inhabitants fall prey to an unknown, insidious disease. Ben soon becomes convinced that the Marston house is the epicenter of this darkness, that the reclusive Mr. Barlow is actually a centuries-old vampire who has come to Salem's Lot to establish a new feeding ground. With the town just descending into chaos, the number of vampires increasing, Ben has to rally a small group of survivors to confront this evil before it just consumes them all. Salem's Lot is a classic example of Stephen King's ability to weave ordinary settings with supernatural horror. The novel's exploration of small-town life and its secrets, it's translated pretty effectively to the screen here, creating a real sense of unease and foreboding that pretty much pervades this film. This was directed by Tobe Hooper, who had become very famous for the Texas Chain Saw Massacre, and Hooper's direction really ensures that every scene sort of builds. It's got suspense and it maintains a very gripping atmosphere. So let's talk about David Soul. As I mentioned, he was already very famous for Starsky and Hutch. He portrays Ben Mears as, well, let's say, stoic. His emotions are not always right on the surface. He's portraying him as a man very much struggling internally with his past. You have James Mason, who his portrayal of the antique dealer, Mr. Straker, it's both charismatic and also chilling at the same time. Only James Mason could deliver some of the lines that he does with boredom and disdain and menace all at the same time.
Oh, you're the writer. On vacation or vocation?
I am writing about the Marston house.
Ah, and you'd like to visit? Well, why not? Mr. Barlow is on a buying trip, but the moment he arrives, you'll enjoy Mr. Barlow, and he'll enjoy you.
This film also features a really strong supporting cast, including Fred Willard. You also have Jeffrey Lewis. Lance Kerwin plays the young Mark Petrie, and Bonnie Bedelia as Susan Norton. This film is just rife with unforgettable moments that have left a real lasting impression on viewers. One standout scene involves Mike Ryerson and Ned Tibbetts transporting a mysterious crate from the docks, which actually holds the vampire Barlow. The scene just builds tension through subtle yet effective techniques. The cold touch of the wood, the crate sliding by itself in the back of the truck, the mounting suspense all contributes to just a masterful buildup of dread. Perhaps one of the most memorable and certainly one of the most terrifying scenes in the film that really traumatized an entire generation of children who saw it is Ralphie Glick floating outside his brother's window, scratching to be let in. That scene, broadcast in November 1979, wow, it left an indelible mark on just a generation of people who saw it, this unsettling portrayal of a child's transformation into a vampire. The quiet, eerie atmosphere of the town, actually, the town in and of itself almost becomes a character within this film. But the sort of slow pacing here and there that you could experience, because this was a miniseries, it was spread out over 4 hours, it actually just enhances it all the more. You sort of get lulled into thinking that everything is okay, and then suddenly you will have moments of more intense supernatural horror that just ratchets up all the tension and dread. The miniseries' ability to evoke atmosphere and character development and psychological tension has earned it a revered place in horror history. Its impact is still felt today. It remains really a must-watch for fans of classic horror. No, not everything is going to hold up quite as well. This was 1979. It was made for television, so the budget was somewhat limited. And yes, the special effects are not going to be quite as dynamic as they could be today, but please do not let that deter you in any way. This film is really amazing. The effort and commitment is there, and believe me, it shows. This story has had various adaptations over the years. You had Larry Cohen directing a video release film called A Return to Salem's Lot in 1987. Had zip to do with King's novel, except it was about a town filled with vampires. There was also a weaker 2004 remake with Rob Lowe. I only saw that version once when it first aired, and I can remember being struck by the fact that, like, okay, the 2004 version, the 1979 version, they were exact same length. They had the exact same amount of time, and yet in the 2004 version, I came away feeling like I just didn't know the characters. I didn't care about the town and the characters nearly as much as I did in the 79 version. It's not to say that the 2004 adaptation does not infuse the story with characters. Lots of characters, because yes, it does, but it just seems like it's all just surface scratching. The script for the 2004 adaptation was by Peter Filardi, and he takes some chances. He updates some of the novel. It includes some characters we never saw in the original miniseries, such as Dud Rogers. And he also has Ben Mears, reimagined as a Gulf War vet, whose experiences helped fueled his writing of his first novel. You've got James Cromwell here as Father Callahan, which is terrific casting. However, Donald Sutherland, who you would think would be absolutely amazing cast as Richard Straker, the vampire's human familiar here, ooh, it falls flat. Frankly, he's one of the weakest parts of the film. He never exudes the kind of stuffy, quiet menace that James Mason was able to bring with just a glance or a sly remark. Rob Lowe is very serviceable here as Ben Mears. He's able to bring a lot more intensity to the role than David Soul did, but where the film totally drops the ball is the casting of Rutger Hauer as Barlow. Again, on paper, that must have seemed like a slam dunk, much like Donald Sutherland. Rutger Hauer plays Barlow more like the character in King's novel. He's suave, he's urbane, but boring. He's not threatening in the least. Reggie Nalder's terrifying turn in the 1979 miniseries was Tobe Hooper's nod to Count Orlok in 1922's Nosferatu. Barlow is presented as a snarling monster that never speaks. He doesn't need to. Frankly, when you have James Mason able to do all of the talking for you, yeah, why would you even bother? Plus, Bonnie Bedelia and Lance Kerwin are perfectly cast, and every time I watch the scene with David Soul and Ed Flanders, who's playing Dr. Bill Norton. They're in the car driving back. Marjorie Glick has just risen from the dead. I always believe every drop of fear and reluctant but undeniable belief in Flanders' performance. There was a reimagining of the origin of the town of Salem's Lot in a series called Chapelwaite. It really has little to do with King's novel. It falls into relying on vampires as part of the backstory of the town's history. It's slow. It's not as compelling as you would hope for. And then we also have another adaptation that came out in 2024 by Gary Dauberman, starring Louis Pullman, Alfred Woodard, and Bill Camp. That was a new stab at a fresh interpretation. The film went through a lot of issues since it was filmed in 2021, but not released until actually dropping on HBO Max in 2024. The original concept would have had a 3-hour runtime, but all of that got shaved down to just 114 minutes. And so what does that mean? It means a lot of what makes King's novels so enticing about the town and the people that are usually front and center, yet all that got jettisoned out. The concept of Barlow is more of an homage to the 1979 miniseries in that he is presented as a bald, ravenous creature, but he's given some dialogue here. Overall, the film was really interesting, but it was the thinnest backbone of what King's novel is, and you can't help but wonder if it had been given a lot more time or even turned into a series, how much more engaging it could have been. It was just way too rushed. To me, the 1979 miniseries remains as the strongest portrayal of King's novel to date, praised for its adaptation and the chilling execution. I can't say there aren't problems with it. There are. Certainly, it looks more like Northern California, where it was actually filmed, than in Maine. Why Ralphie Glick vanishes in the woods fully clothed and he ends up visiting his brother outside the window in pajamas. Okay, that's a little inconsistent. I can only assume it was part of some trim moments that would have explained it. And how Barlow somehow burst through the crate, because you see the entire wooden crate just in shards of wood everywhere all over the cellar of the Marston house. But yet the coffin at the end of the film is completely intact. I'm not sure. It would require some speculation on the viewer's part there to figure that out. Typically, you would have burial soil or dirt from your grave within the coffin. And so it makes sort of an undead mobile home. And so it would make sense that the coffin would have been shipped at the same time that Barlow would have. But I guess you could say the coffin was sent separately. Barlow was shipped just in the crate by himself. But then now that raises the question, well, then why have to sleep in the coffin at all? Anyway, my point is it still stands as one of the creepiest and most significant horror made-for-TV miniseries ever. Remember, the late 1970s had Frank Langella in Universal's big screen adaptation of Dracula, but retold as romance instead of horror. You had Werner Herzog's remake of Nosferatu, but it was more of an artistic interpretation. And then just a few years earlier, George Hamilton's comedic spoof of Dracula in Love at First Bite had come out. So this miniseries did something that a lot of others were failing to do. They made vampires scary. The glowing eyes like headlights in the dark, the idea of a town slowly dying away. And even though Barlow is only seen about 3 times in the miniseries, I believe, you see him attacking Ned Tibbets in prison. You see the attack on Mark's family, the Petries, and then at the conclusion, but I think, unless I'm missing one, that's pretty much the only times that you end up seeing him. And yet every time you see him, it's pretty intense. So if you have not experienced it yet, please let's take a drive up to the lot. It is a truly great made-for-TV movie experience. So please go and check it out. Until next time, everyone, stay curious and stay scared.